about to watch a church experience message. If you'd like to learn more or get connected or help fuel the movement by giving online, just click on the appropriate links on the website.
You lift me up, fill my eyes with wonder. Forever young in your love, this freedom's untainted. With you, no moment is wasted. See the sun now bursting through the clouds, black and white, turn to color all around. All is new in the Savior I have found. This is living now. Living now. You take me higher than I've been before. It's your perfect love that sees me soar. God, your freedom is an open door. You are everything I want and more.
Well, last Sunday, if you missed it, I feel bad for you because we had Man Day here last Sunday, and it was awesome. If you were here, I mean, we're so cool. I mean, we got to eat chocolate-covered bacon on the way out. That was a highlight for me. Seeing stuff that guys hate being blown up while the band was playing I'm the Man, that was cool. The Grand Prix tickets that were given away to the cornhole winner. I mean, it was genuinely like one of my favorite days we've done. That was a really, really cool day. But I'll tell you what, on the way out, I had a great Father's Day, and on the way out, the kids, I have four of them, they gave me these little sheets that they created in Kid Experience. And the volunteers there, they had them fill out these sheets, stuff about your dad. And they filled in the blanks, and it was stuff like what's his favorite color, favorite food, and all that. Well, one of the things is they said is, what is your dad good at? And my son, Kylan, put climbing things is what he wrote, and because that's because he's a climber. Kylan loves to climb stuff. So if we get to climb a tree together, that's his moment. You know, he loves that kind of stuff. Well, he didn't say when they asked him, "What's your dad good at?" He didn't say climbing. Whitney, our Kid Experience pastor, she couldn't wait to tell me like what he actually said, because I read on the sheet it said climbing, and she said that's not what he actually said. When we asked, "What is your dad good at?" he said he's good at getting high. That's what he actually said. So it's like, yeah. I don't know what you say to that. I don't know. We're not in Colorado, so you can't really celebrate that or anything, but it's ridiculous. Well, we're talking about how to win at work today in this series on living the dream. And work is a part of all of our lives. It just looks different for each of us, right? I mean, it's different for every person. And every person, it's different. And your work, it's unique to you. And how do you do that well? How do you do that in a God-honoring way that brings life to you? And that's the challenge. And if you're struggling with that, if you're struggling with the area of work in your life, and it doesn't matter if you're a student, if you're looking for work, if you have work, good or bad, or you're retired from work, you still have work as a part of your life. So how do you do that well? Well, if you're struggling, let me just say you're in good company. Because the wisest person that ever walked this planet, his name was Solomon. He was a king, and he lived thousands of years ago. And this King Solomon, he put some words to paper when it comes to this area of work and his struggle with it. And so I just want to begin today by reading from Ecclesiastes chapter 2. We're going to put the verses on the screen if you'd like to follow along, but Ecclesiastes chapter 2, beginning in verse 21. He says this, he says, "For a person may labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then they must leave all they own to another who has not toiled for it. This too is meaningless and a great misfortune. What do people get for all the toil and anxious striving which they labor under the sun? All their days their work is grief and pain. Even at night their minds do not rest. This too is meaningless." You know, Solomon, this great wise man, he struggled with this concept of work too. What's the purpose in it? And it's a lot of work and it's a lot of sweat. And what do you actually get out of it? And especially, what do you get that's sustaining, that's lasting? Some great questions. Well, he didn't stop there, and he goes on and he says this. He gives us a little bit of clarity. He says, verse 24 of Ecclesiastes 2, "A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too I see is from the hand of God. For without him, who can eat or find enjoyment?" So he brings it back to God. Later in Ecclesiastes, he talks about the fear of God being what it all comes down to, this respect and honor and love for God. And so to enjoy our work, to live for God, these things are possible, and they can make life sweet. They can make life better when they're done well, but they're not easy, right? I mean, we all understand there's problems and there's issues when we talk about this part of our life, and honestly, this can be one of the big tripping points, one of the big roadblocks that keeps people from really what they would say living the dream. You know, if things were better at work, or if I had more fulfillment at work, or if my work was whatever in a different way, then I would be able to really say I'm living the dream. Well, part of the issue is that we live in this temporary world, and a lot of the things we do with our hands and our minds here on this earth, the work that we do, a lot of it is of the temporary world, and so it's not lasting. And there's some challenges in that, says Solomon. But I think to lay a foundation, we need to understand something, and I put it in your notes if you'd like to write these down and you'd like to follow along that way. On the back of your weekly there's a clipboard and pen under your seat. I'd encourage you to write this down. We work to live well and not live to work. You know, God created work for us to help us live well, not that we would live to work. Now, work got exponentially more difficult and painful when sin entered the world. If you read the opening chapters of the Bible, once sin entered the world, God said the work is going to be more toilsome. It's going to be more difficult for you. But we work to live well. We don't live to work. And people can get stuck in a couple different dangerous riptides in this area of work. They can either be consumed by work, or the love of the result of work, which is often the monetary gain you get from it, and they can become a workaholic, and work can almost become like a god or an idol in their life. And this is a dangerous category that people get sucked into all the time. Or it can become something that drains the life out of you, and you don't enjoy what you're doing, and it's a pain, and you allow it to escalate to the point to where it really ruins life, and it drains it out of you. Yeah, despite the challenges that are inherently within this concept of working and honoring God in our work, we can, in a way that's pleasing to God and honoring to Him, we can work in such a way that it gives life to us. And there's a few thoughts behind what makes work good and how it brings life to us. I just thought of a few. One is that it can provide for you and for your family. Of course, that's why you work, is to get a paycheck. But you think about what that actually does. That provides for you or your family. That provides resources that you can use to not only help yourself or to meet needs or even wants or desires that are not needs, but you can also use it to help others and to give away like we're able to do today, to be a blessing to others. All work, regardless of compensation, even if it's like volunteer work or things like this, it provides a number of things for us. Work can provide new skills and information, life experience. Work can provide satisfaction and accomplishment. These are gifts from God. Work can provide opportunity to connect with other people. It can be a connecting place. It can provide an opportunity for us to worship God through doing whatever it is that we're doing with excellence. So we really can live the dream in this area of work, and there's a lot of good that can come out of our work. We don't think of it that way. Sometimes it's like drudgery, or it's something you have to do. It's a got to do. But it can be a get to from God, and it really is a gift from Him. God expects work. If you think about the opening chapters of the Bible in Genesis, what did God give Adam and Eve to do, the very first two people? He gave them work to do, right? I mean, it began with a pretty cool job. He said, I want you to name all the animals. I mean, that's a pretty awesome job. I mean, how do you do that? I mean, that's pretty awesome. And they got to name the animals. Then he said, I want you to populate the earth. And I want you to multiply and subdue the earth and rule over the animals. And if you read that opening dialogue, it's really interesting, the job description he gives them. It's like, kind of rule over the earth. I've created this beautiful place for you. There's opportunity, and just go for it. This is a gift to you. And he's always expected work, even when God's a part of it. You think the miraculous way that God saved humanity, despite how once humanity started pulling away and rebelling against God, and it became such a sinful place, and God said, I'm just going to destroy this, and then he found a righteous man, Noah, and he decided he was going to save and spare him and his family and kind of start over again, and he flooded the earth. He said, it's the only time I'm going to do this, and he did that, and he said, Noah, I want you to build a boat, and I'm going to save you through it. And so God did the saving, but what did he ask Noah to do? He asked him to what? He asked him to work, right? To build a boat that size, a massive boat, and you can read about it in the Bible. I mean, like he had to do the work. So God expects work from us, and he's always done that. And because it can be a good thing for us, it can be a very good thing for us. And if your goal in life is to avoid work, which I kind of say this with a smile on my face because I know that's the reality. There's some people who's like, if I could just like sit on the beach all day long, like that would be awesome. if the only work I had to do was like pick up my pina colada, you know, like that would just be, like that would be the dream. Like if that's all I had to do, I mean, come on, don't lie. Don't say you have never dreamed about that. But really, if that's your dream is to avoid work, then you probably have false expectations about what living the dream would actually be like, because there would be a huge hole in your life if there was nothing to contribute to on this earth. So role models are actually helpful when we think about work. So role models are helpful, and I want to look at one in the Bible who worked, and he actually had a really bad situation, and he could have been featured on like the bad job show, like the Dirty Jobs. Like he could have like had a starring role in that because he had a lot of really bad jobs. And this story is found in Genesis, and the guy's name is Joseph. You might be familiar with Joseph, but you know, he lived a challenging life, and it began as a life that was very promising. He was in the home of a very wealthy man whose name was Jacob. Jacob had many sons, and Joseph was the favored son of all the brothers. So your dad's wealthy, and there's going to be an inheritance there, and he's a leader in the community and all these great things. And you're his son, but not only are you his son among all these other kids, you're like his favorite son. So his life starts out pretty good. He's this young guy with a lot of potential. But then it goes south pretty quick. And we're going to pick up the story in Genesis chapter 37, beginning in verse 3. It says, now Israel, that's Jacob's name. God changed his name to Israel. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose up and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. Okay, top 10 things not to say to your brothers who are already angry at you, right? His brother said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Hey, little bro, like, what's up with this? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. We're going to pick up the story a little bit further down the road. We're going to skip ahead to verse 18, and you're going to see how these brothers, the anger grew, and it grew into bitterness. Genesis 37, verse 18. Joseph's going to visit his brothers while they're at work, and it says, but they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. Well, thankfully, they did not kill him, and instead, they decided to be nice. I mean, after all, he's their brother, their own flesh and blood. They're like, let's not kill him. Let's just sell him into slavery, right? Let's just sell him off into another country. You probably thought about that concept if you had like a little sibling before, right? Well, they actually did it. Genesis chapter 39, verse 1. Now, Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. He's shipped off to a whole other country. They tell dad that he was killed by an animal. He's still alive. They just sold him off. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought Joseph from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. Now, man, let's just stop there. You know, so Joseph, think about like his situation and his difficulty. You know, he's got these dreams. He wants to live the dream like you and I, right? And he's got a lot of potential. But then he's dealt a bad hand. And I think this is one of the biggest stumbling blocks for us is that when we look at our lives and we say, man, I didn't have it as good as whoever else. You know, my life started out rough, or I didn't have a good family. I didn't have a good career. I didn't have a good education. I didn't have good resources. I didn't have whatever. And we're given a bad context to begin in. And so how do you live the dream, especially in this area of work, when you don't feel like you're being given a good situation? Well, Joseph, not only that, he's given work to do that's not ideal either. He's sold off into slavery. So that means he's in a new culture where he doesn't know anybody, in a new country. And he has to do this work for someone else that he probably doesn't want to do, but he's forced to do it. It's forced labor. But it began with a dream. God put a dream in Joseph's heart, and this dream that he shared with his brothers was a dream that really was indicating God's future for him, which was a dream to have great influence, to make a great impact. And I have to imagine that it says he was 17 years old in the beginning of this story. I have to imagine in his 17-year-old heart that he loved the thought of that, like you and I do as well, that God would do something in and through us that would make a difference, that our lives would matter, that he wouldn't ask like Solomon did, you know, is this all meaningless? all the toil of my hands, does it really make an impact? And the thought that maybe he could use his one life to do something that would make it a long-term impact had to be exciting for the 17-year-old young man, until the bottom drops out and everything changes. But he had this dream, and how do you know if you're dreaming? You think about work and the different kinds of work and different kinds of passions and things that you could pour your life into and things you've thought about putting your life into. How do you know if your dream is a God dream or if it's just your own selfish ambition? How do you know if it's from God or if it's from you? And I was kind of just thinking that through about, and you're just wrestling with this thought, and this is what I felt like God put in my heart. If it's a God-given dream, it's two things to it. It's for God's glory, and it's also for the good of others. If it's a God-given dream, it's for the good of others, and it's for the glory of God. It's to honor God. When it's a self-centered dream, if you really break it down, a lot of times it's for our glory, and it's for our benefit. And you can kind of weigh out your dreams and filter them through that if you want to really discern, is this something that God's leading me in? Is this of him, or is this of me? Well, who gets the glory from it? Is it you? Is that who gets the real benefit? Are other people influenced and impacted, or is it just for yourself? Well, God had put a clear vision in Joseph's heart to make an impact, and it was for God's glory. And in your notes, I would love for you to write this down. I think it's a good starting point to think about work and the challenges that come with it. And that's that progress rarely comes without many obstacles. Progress rarely comes without many obstacles. There's not too many things that God calls us to chase that don't have obstacles. I mean, even just the simple tasks of like the work of raising a family and being in a family, especially in the culture that we live in, where everyone's attacking family and what we've always perceived as family and what it should be and how it could be, and you know, a man and a woman being together with children and raising a home and all the things that God gave to Adam and Eve at the very beginning. He said, here, multiply the earth, have children, love on your kids, raise your kids, teach them to follow me. And all these things are being attacked, whether it's from media or politics or all the different angles, because the devil's trying to destroy the foundation blocks of our society, which is family. He's trying to destroy that. It's not easy. In fact, Jennifer and I, today is actually our anniversary. So it's been 13 years. Yeah, give it up for that. That's awesome. 13 years. We got together pretty young. We actually got together at 19 years old, and I'm so grateful for that. And we've had a great relationship. But man, I'll tell you what, I feel like we're living the dream relationally. We have a great and healthy marriage, and we have some kids, and we're trying to teach them to find and follow God and live for him. And I'm just thankful for our family. But it's not been without obstacles. You could talk to Jennifer. She'll be like, yeah, every day with this guy is an obstacle. It's like I mean, there is obstacles in life and anything good. But we're able to live the dream because we press through the obstacles. And there could have been many off-ramps for anybody that's in a relationship a long time. But we decided, you know what? When we made those vows, forsaking all others till death do us part, we're going to make this commitment. And it's not easy. And there's challenges and adversity. Anything good in life requires work. And so here's my point. It's an illustration, but the point is this. Anything good in life, there's obstacles. Anything God calls you to, he's going to have to get you through, and he will, but you have to do your part. You have to work. And progress rarely comes without obstacles. You know, the highway to greatness is more like I think like a mountain expedition. I had my mountaineering pack on last week, and it's really a lot more like a mountain expedition. And I titled the message today, Great Dreams Require Hard Work. And I don't mean that it's hard to think of a great dream. I think it's easy to sit around and think of great dreams. We've all, stepped out of the shower and had some great dream that we thought of in those 10 minutes we were in the shower. We came out and did nothing with it. It's not hard work to come up with a dream. It's hard work to implement a dream, especially a God-given dream. There's prayers, and there's waiting on God, and there's preparation. Dreams take hard work. A simple illustration from culture. Check this out. Don't clap because there's someone next to you that doesn't like Justin Timberlake. But, I mean, isn't that kind of cool, though? I mean, do you think, like, any area of life, I mean, it just takes work. Because I think, like, musicians, to me, because I'm not a musician, a natural singer or anything. I like to sing, but I'm not a natural singer. And I see people like that are ridiculously talented naturally. And you're like, oh, okay, of course, that they would be able to do that. They were just born that way. But then you hear someone who's like a really good singer or a musician, and they say, man, I worked and I disciplined myself and I trained for it. I mean, it's just like crazy amount of effort that went into this. It didn't just come. And it makes more sense then. I think of even the guys that lead us in music every week, like they put a ton of work into that, and they're doing this for God and to lead us into worship. And you think, well, they probably just step on the stage and But man, they practice and they go through their parts and they do the chords and the notes in so many different times and so many different ways. And there's one guy on our team, he's actually not playing today. And he told me, I'll ask him every weekend when he plays, I say, so you didn't sleep last night? He's like, no, like 2 hours, 3 hours. He just can't sleep on Saturday night. He's like up late going over his music, and he has a hard time even sleeping because he's so amped up for what he gets to do. And it's like, it's work for anybody in any area of life that does something. We might look and say, well, they're naturally good at that. I'm not good at that. That's cool. They got that gift. I didn't. Well, the reality is that they were gifted and called to it, but they had to work through it. And the same is true for us. And so I'm just asking, what dream has God put in your heart? Because whatever dream that is, whatever destination that God has called you to, there's work in between here and there. And I put it this way in your notes if you're writing notes down. Hard work stands between the dream and the destination. Hard work stands between the dream and the destination. So whatever goal it is you have in life, relationally, and work and your career, your passion area, and making a difference in the world. Whoever started World Hope that we're able to partner with and give away these 3,000 plants that are going to help people and provide income. Like someone had to have that calling and that vision to begin that. Her name was Joanne Lyon, and she had this vision, and she was going to start this organization that's going to make an impact and help the least in the world and help those who are in poverty. But it had to be worked through. It didn't just come and just happen. It was a lot of hard work, a lot of late nights, a lot of prayer. Well, there's a lot of work to do for all of us between our dream and the destination. First time I encountered real hard work, grown-up work, I was 16 years old, and I'd had jobs like paper routes and these kind of things. But I got a job in a furniture factory. It's called Fleetwood Furniture. And my parents had knew the guy that was working there, and so they got me in for a summer job because I really wanted to get a car like some of my friends had. And so I showed up at 6 a.m., which meant I have to get up like 5:15, 5:30. All my friends were like sleeping in at 16 years old. They're sleeping in the summer until 10 a.m. They're going to the beach. They're having a good time. I'm getting up like early in the morning. I'm going to this furniture factory. I'm the young one there. All these like bigger, rougher like people that are there, and they're just like, it's not like the place you want to be when you're 16 is working in a furniture factory. And then one of my jobs is they put me in the semi-truck to load the trucks, and it's like above 100 degrees in there, and it's sweltering heat, and like you're sweating, you're like, why am I doing this? And then I finally got the car that I wanted. I bought it for $500, 1980s Honda Civic. I got it from a buddy. And then, of course, you can't do this in Florida, but I was living in Michigan at the time. I got stuck in the snow. All right, I had the car like 6 months. I got stuck in the snow, and I'm trying to get out, and I redlined the thing and blew the engine. It's like, are you kidding me? I worked all summer, and I got the dream, and then the dream was not what I hoped it would be, and you find out, I mean, right, isn't that life? I mean, you get into something, you have this dream, and you get into it, and it's like, this is work. And then you get in and you start working. It's like not only work to get to the dream, it's work to maintain the dream. You want to maintain a family, you want to maintain a career, you want to pursue a passion and see God use you to help people. I mean, that's hard work, and that does not come. It's like, I like to garden. I have a little tropical garden in my house. It's a real small little thing, and I have one pineapple plant. I have some hibiscus flowers. I told you, but but man, you know what I've learned about? It's hard work to maintain something. It's nice to have a little palm tree there, but man, did you realize the weeds come up every week around the plant? So you got to spray them or you got to pull them out, and thankfully in my case, pay $1 to your 8-year-old. Say, hey, we pull those weeds for me. It's like, man, it's hard work to maintain it. And I was out yesterday. My lawnmower broke, and so it took me a while to get a mower fixed, and I actually wasn't able to get it fixed, and I had to buy a new to me lawnmower. And so I went out yesterday, and I finally finished like mowing my yard for the first time in a long time. And it was so cool, and like late at night before bed, I was just standing out in the backyard, and I was just looking around my yard, and I'm like, that's awesome. Like just this nice little space, like all the grass is cut because there's like huge weeds, and I was going along the fence, and it's like a foot high, and I'm like when you have to lift the lawnmower up to like chomp down on the weeds, that's just as bad, And I'm just sitting out, and my wife is like looking out the window at me like, see what you doing? Looking at the grass. It's like, it must be real exciting, right? It's like, no, this is a great moment. You should come try it. Like, just look. I mean, it's cut. It's like that satisfaction that comes when you've done something and it's, that you wanted to do. And man, but it's work, isn't it? Because it's going to be back next week and the week after that and the week after that. And it's work. It's work to maintain anything good. And if we're under the illusion that we're going to be able to live great lives and live the dream without work, it's exactly that. It's an illusion. In every area of life. And God has gifted us to work and to pour ourselves into it. So the goal is not to avoid it. It's to win in that area of our lives. Genesis chapter 39, verse 2. So we know that Joseph was sold into slavery. He's in Potiphar's house. He's doing this labor that he doesn't want to do. Genesis chapter 39, verse 2. This is how he responds. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with Joseph, and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. From the time he put him in charge of his household and all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field, so that Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. Now Joseph was well built and a handsome man. All the ladies said, hey, come on, you know you want to. All right, so after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, come to bed with me. But he refused. With me in charge, he told her, my master does not concern himself with anything in this house. Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care. Now, no one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. And listen to Joseph's words. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. Way to go, Joseph, right? Can you imagine the pressure on him? He's in a foreign country, a new culture. He's a slave, and then he's moved to management in this house, and he's managing the household of this wealthy man in another country, being forced to do so. And then there's sexual temptation, not from anybody, but from his boss's wife. I mean, this is a lot, and he's a young guy, and there's a lot of pressure on him early in his life. He's given a tough role. What do you do when the pressure's on? Some of you feel that way at work, and it might not be those exact same circumstances, but when you hear that story, you're like, I feel that way. I feel the load. I feel the pressure. What do you do with pressure? Well, there's a few things that you can do with pressure that are destructive. 4 of them that I can think of. One is that you can get angry, and you can take the pressure out on others and take pressure out on the world around you. You can have a bad attitude. Okay, maybe you want to write these down. Maybe you have a bad attitude, right? When there's pressure, you just bad attitude. Joseph could have had a bad attitude. You could get sucked into apathy. The pressure, I'm just going to escape the pressure. I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to back out of my commitments. I'm not going to follow through. I'm not going to see it through. We can get out of it. Or anger. Or excuse me, not anger, addiction. And you can get stuck in addiction, and pressure sometimes causes people to run to other things for security. And they might run to a bottle, or they might run to a wrong relationship, but they get stuck in some kind of addiction to relieve the pressure. But what we really need to do with pressure is to take it to God. And that's the best way to relieve pressure, is to bring it to God through prayer and come before God, and we get with him and we say, God, I feel the weight on my shoulders right now. And God, I don't know how to handle this. And we take it to him and we take it to his church. His church, meaning his church is primarily his people. It's not a program. It's not a building. It's not an institution. The people, that's what we refer to this as, a movement. It's like a gathering of people, a movement of people. We're God's church, all right? I mean, like, you take it to other believers and you say, hey, and you lock arms and you say, I need some help. You know, I need some support. I need some prayer, right? And we bring the pressure to God, and that's how we relieve the pressure. And Joseph had a lot of pressure. Genesis chapter 39, I want to look back at verse 4. Joseph found favor in his master's eyes, and he became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything that he owned. So Potiphar gave this great entrustment to Joseph because Joseph was found faithful. He was diligent, and he was disciplined with the work that God has put in his life. When following God, what we view sometimes as a setback may be a setup. Because, see, God is testing Joseph. He's given him an opportunity. He's setting him up for the fulfillment of that dream that we're going to see later on in his life, but it required faithfulness on his part and diligence. And if you're waiting for the ideal circumstances to give your best or to actually be able to enjoy life and live the dream, you're going to miss the opportunities that God has for you. And I put it this way in your notes: ideal circumstances are brief and often a myth, if they exist even at all. The ideal circumstances, I mean, we look at other people's lives and all we see is the outside. We see something good, or we see someone being successful, and we think, man, you know, I would love for God to do that in my life. I wish I had their circumstances. You know, we look at other people's highlight reel, and we don't see all the practice and all the preparation, and we don't see all the work and the prayers and the sacrifices. We look at others' highlight reel, and we say, oh man, that'd be nice if things turned out like that for me. And the reality is, for Joseph, he was not given much, and he had to turn the bad into something good, and that's exactly what he did. If we get caught up in chasing a destination, we'll miss out on the journey. And part of living the dream is to find joy in every step of the journey that God gives to us. To find, as I heard one person say, to find beauty in every frame of the real. To find beauty in every frame of the real. Even if that's the kind of sequence that you would love to like skip through and to fast forward through, to find joy even in those moments. You know, at work, this happens all the time. A mentor of mine, a coach of mine, Dan Ryland, he's the executive pastor at our partner church, 12 Stone Church. I had an opportunity to sit with him recently and learn once again, as I have so many times. And he put an article out, which you can read on his blog at danryland.com. He put out an article just this last week, interestingly tied in with what we're talking about today. And he talked about how his tenure with John Maxwell. He was John Maxwell's right-hand guy for like 20 years. And everybody knows John Maxwell is a big leadership guru and this kind of thing. Well, he worked alongside John Maxwell. And John Maxwell is known for saying, I just do these 4 things. These are my sweet spot. This is what I'm good at in work. And I do these 4 things. And he said, young leaders look at that, and they want that. They want to do just the things that they want to do. And he said, here's how I answer young leaders when they come, they say, well, I want to do what he does. I want to just do this one thing or these few things. I want to have, like, my dream job. I just want to do the work that's fun. This is what he said. And he knew John really well. He says, it took John Maxwell about 30 years to arrive at the place in his career where he could do only the 4 things that he's gifted and designed to do. Over the course of those many years, he did 37 things at all times and at an exhausting rate. Things that were difficult, not what he wanted. Often just the junk stuff that someone asked him to do or someone needed him to do. And candidly, he did it with a smile and a cheerful heart. John did it with 100% effort. You know, it kind of reminds me of Joseph. You know, he's in a not ideal circumstance, is he? I mean, his brothers sold him out. He's in a foreign country. He's in slavery. He's been put in this position. But he does it well. And here's what Dan went on to write in this article for young leaders. He said, you know, and this might help some of us practically in your work. Some of you are trying to find joy in your work and trying to win at work. Here's 6 things real quick. He says, be willing to do what others are not willing to do. Deliver solutions and solve problems at work. Show up early. Stay late. Genuinely be joyful and have gratitude in your attitude. Discover and develop and delight in your true gifts. And finally, do your current job well before dreaming of the next job. And I just thought those are such practical and helpful things. And it reminds me of one of my favorite verses in Proverbs. We're reading through the book of Proverbs together. If you're doing the summer Bible reading program with us here, and I can share a little bit more on that later. But Proverbs 28:19, I love this verse. It says, those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies will have their fill of poverty. Those who work their land. What land has God given you to work? What's right around you to do? What is it that God's put in your life? Who has God put in your life? Are you being diligent with what God's put in your life? Because you know what, honestly, Joseph probably didn't want that job. Even being the household manager, he probably wanted to go home. He probably wanted to go back to be the favored son in his father's household. And it didn't sound to me like he had the difficult job. You know, he was going out to check on his brothers who were working in the field. That means he was not working in the field, right? Dad's like, hey, can you take care of maybe some of the office stuff around the house? Gave him kind of easy job. Here's a robe for you. Let me take care of you. He probably wanted to go back to that nice, comfortable environment. But you know what? This is what he was given. And he had to be faithful. What have you been given? Are you being faithful? How could you excel at your current situation? Again, Genesis chapter 39. I want to look back at a very important part of this story that I just read. Genesis 39, verse 8. So when his boss's wife tempts him to go to bed with her, it says he refused. With me in charge, he told her, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house or everything he owns he has entrusted to my care. No one in the house is greater than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then, and check out his attitude, how then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed or even be around her. I mean, way to go, Joseph, right? He's got this pressure on him. There's an easy out, a temptation to get in with the boss's wife. And what does he do? He sticks to his conviction, and interestingly, he does it because of his faith in God. The same God that allowed him to be sold into slavery. The same God that allowed him to be betrayed by his brothers. The same God that allowed him to have this unideal work situation. Sometimes we get angry at God. Well, God, you did this, so I'm going to do what I feel like doing. I'm not going to honor you, God. And we miss out on our future. It's the undoing of the great work that God's doing in us and the great work that God wants to do through us. Because, see, God allowed Joseph to be in this environment because he was taking him to a much higher mountaintop. In fact, if you're on a mountaintop in life and you go through a valley, you know what's true? It means God could be setting you up to go to a higher mountaintop. Because the only way to get from one peak in life to a higher peak is to go down through the valley. You don't jump from mountaintop to mountaintop. And some of us want it that way, but that's not how life works. So maybe if you're in transition, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you think it's a setback and it's really a setup from God, and that's where Joseph was. But he had integrity. I noticed a few things here. He was a man under authority. He served the person who was over him, even though in this we disagree with what they did in that culture and slavery and all that was wrong. You know what? He still honored the person that was in authority over him. He was in that situation. He said, I'm going to honor my authority. I think God blesses those who honor authority. It doesn't matter what kind of role it is. If there's someone who's in leadership above you, you honor them. And some of you have people that you work under that are not people of integrity, and you don't respect them. They haven't earned your respect, but we're to give respect and give honor. There's a deeper kind of respect that's earned and that we grow in, but to give respect is honoring to God. It says he refused to sin by committing adultery with her to sleep with her. He kept his faith in God. I couldn't sin against God in this way. He kept boundaries. It said, did you notice that he refused to even be around her? It's not that he just went to sleep with her. He's like, I'm having boundaries. Girl, I'm keeping you away. I don't even want you to get close to me. Right? I don't even want to flirt with you. He's keeping it a safe distance away. And so I'll just ask you this question. Am I guided by my faith and integrity at work? Joseph was a man of integrity. All right, so I brought this from my garage. And some of the work I need to do is I need to clean out my garage because I've not been able to set up my weight bench set since we've been in our home in November. And this is the bar that, holds the weight, of course. And some of you are looking at this and you're like, okay, it doesn't look like Brandon has used that much because, it's like not much up there. But, my intention is to one day get ripped and buff and all that for my lovely wife. But it's a work in progress. And so this reminds me, when I think of integrity, I think of, in an interesting way, I think of this pole here. Because integrity actually comes from a root word, integer. An integer, whole, you think of like a whole number and these kind of things. It's whole, it's consistent, it's full. And if you think of something that has integrity, you think of like a straight bar. It has integrity, it has consistency. There's no like bend in the bar. It's straight, it's consistent, it's whole. But if you look up here where the clips are and where this little metal deal is to hold the weights on, this is a lack of integrity, a lack of consistency, because the rest of the bar has consistency and integrity. It has wholeness. When you get to this, there's a deviance from what would otherwise have integrity, right? You get the concept? That's where we get the word integrity. Does your life have this kind of consistency, integrity, or is there some kind of deviation in the integrity of your life and how you're living? Joseph could have easily derailed his life, his career, his future, his work, what God wanted to do in and through him. But he chose to have consistency, to not allow even a little bit of integrity to seep into his life. Where are you at with that? How are you doing with that? You got to tell me. You got to tell the person next to you. But you need to tell somebody if you have a lack of integrity. You confess that. You say, hey, I'm struggling in this area of my life. I'm wrestling with this. Here's a battle I got going on. And you can tell me if you need someone to talk to. Come talk to one of the leaders here. We'll help you out. Try to get you connected in some way. You can talk to God about it too. Integrity. God blesses the upright in heart. He blesses the righteous. It's his desire for us. Do you have integrity with your work? Do you have integrity? Are you living out your faith in the workplace? Genesis chapter 39, unfortunately, Joseph's life goes through one more dip that we're going to read about just briefly. Genesis chapter 39, verse 19. Genesis 39, verse 19. When his master heard the story his wife told him, saying, this is how your slave treated me, he burned with anger. So this wife, even though Joseph said, I'm not going to sleep with you, she goes to her husband and she said, Joseph tried to take advantage of me. Joseph tried to get with me. Is that what happened? Not at all. But she goes to him anyway. She lies. And, of course, Potiphar is upset and he's angry. His master's upset and angry about this. Genesis 39, verse 20. All right, verse 19. She says, this is how your slave treated me. He burned with anger. Verse 20, Joseph's master took him, put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. And while Joseph was there in prison, the Lord was with him. He showed kindness. He granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph, this sounds familiar, he put him in charge of all those held in the prison. And he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything done under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. Now that didn't happen overnight. We don't know how many years he was there in prison. We're going to see later that when he exits prison, he's about 30 years old. So there's a 13-year gap between when he was sold into slavery and to when his life finally got good, somewhere in that 13 years, a lot of that could have been his time in the prison. Some of that was at Potiphar's house. We don't know the exact numbers, but for years he was there in prison, falsely accused. Did he do anything wrong? Nothing wrong. In fact, he was living a very honorable, God-honoring life. And his life takes a dip. What do you do when your life takes a dip? And some of us are in that moment right now, and you're thinking, man, my life, the bottom's falling out. I don't even have a job. I'm looking for a job. I hate my job. Life's tough. How do I live the dream, Brandon, in this situation when everything changed? Well, Joseph had that situation. A man who's following God, living from God, and everything falls apart. What do you do in that situation? I came across a book a while back that I read. It's called The Dip. And it's just a simple little book. It's a very short book, and it says, a little book that teaches you when to quit and when to stick. Now that's an interesting title, When to Quit, When to Stick. And the whole idea of this book called The Dip is this. I can tell you, I can give you the whole book in 60 seconds, the main part of it. It's this. Is that anyone in life, that this author had watched, anyone in life who had success, they went through a dip before things went up and to the right. So before things went up and to the right and they got good, they went through this dip. They went through a valley. And he said a lot of people, in fact, most people quit at exactly the wrong time. He said most people in life, when they get in the dip, right before things are going to turn and get good, they quit. But he said some people need to quit purposefully because they're not in a valley, they're in a cul-de-sac, they're in a roundabout. And they're stuck. And that thing ain't ever going to get good. It's not going to ever go up into the right. They just don't know it. They're in a bad situation that's never going to be good, and they need to quit that so that they can get in a good situation. Maybe their work it's a bad job. It's never going to be a high-paying job to provide for their family. It's never going to have benefits. It's never going to get them anywhere. They're working for people who don't have integrity, and they need to take the risk and leave that and go to something different. But he said most people are in that dip, and they just need to have faithfulness and persevere and see it through, and eventually God will bless that. But they quit exactly the wrong time. And so here's what I put in your notes. Prayerfully rely on God's guidance in the dip. Prayerfully, this is so important, prayerfully rely on God's guidance in the dip. If you're in the dip right now and you say, how do I win at work? How do I live the dream, Brandon? I want to live the dream. How do I live the dream at work? And I'm in a dip and I don't know what to do. I need to know what's next. Prayerfully rely on God's guidance. Get with him in prayer. Get with other believers. What do you think? Get advice. Success is found, as it says in Proverbs, around many advisors. Continue to be faithful at what he's called you to do. Whatever it is that you have in your life to do now, be faithful at it. Let's put on the screen here Luke chapter 16, verse 10 to 12. Luke 16, verse 10, Jesus himself, he says, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? If you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? So whatever God's entrusted you with now, be faithful with that. Be responsible with that. Handle that well. Do it with excellence, and God will be pleased with that. And if you can be trusted with little, you can be trusted with more. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to summarize the rest of the story for you, but the verses are there. I put them in the bottom of your notes there in the weekly if you want to read just at least the highlights of the story or read the whole thing throughout the rest of the chapters of Genesis. But in Genesis chapter 41, you see that what happens is Joseph is stuck in prison, and God gives him the ability to interpret dreams, and there's some of the king's attendants that have been put in jail for a season. They get to know this about Joseph. They get back in Pharaoh's service. Joseph's still in jail. Pharaoh has a dream. Who could interpret this for me? No one can. And these guys remember there's this dude in jail who he told us our dreams, and like God was with him and gave him great wisdom and insight. You should have him come. And he pulls Joseph out, and he's got this huge dream. It's just he can't sleep at night. The ruler, and he says, Joseph, tell me what's going on. And Joseph interprets his dream for him as something that actually happened about a period of famine in the land, and then a period of abundance, and then a period of famine. And he finds favor in Pharaoh's eyes, and long story short, Pharaoh ends up putting Joseph in charge of this whole country. He's second in command underneath Pharaoh. And what he does is he's faithful in this time of abundance, so that in the years of famine that were to follow, his family was provided for. His brothers even came to buy grain from him in Egypt because he'd stored up these huge storehouses of grain in the time of abundance. And so he's saving a nation. He's saving his family. God uses him in an incredible way. He prepared him through pressure, through temptation, and through perseverance. He set him up for what he wanted to do in his life. Joseph was diligent in the difficult times, so that in times of abundance, God could use him and bless him in an incredible way. But the reality is that many people miss out on the greatness that God wants to do them because of apathy, because they miss out on the goodness that God wants to bring in their life in the long run. Well, as I kind of wrap this message up, I want to give you kind of a visual of what apathy is. You guys know what apathy is, right? Like we think about, missing out on on through hard work, we're missing out on, what God has for us. This is the best analogy. You dog lovers are going to love this. Check this out. Okay, so this right here, that's the best visual I could give you of laziness, right? It's like, I'm too tired to even get up and eat. I'm just going to lay here, and I'm going to lick the food off the floor, because I don't want to get up. That would be too much work. I'm just going to chill right here, and I'm just going to lick the food off the floor. I love it. Isn't that good? I mean, it's like, yeah, that's living the dream right there, right? No, it's not. Let me jump to, there's so much more I'd share with you if we had time, but let me just read from Proverbs. We were reading in Proverbs right now as a church, so let me jump to Proverbs chapter 24. Proverbs chapter 24, verse 34. There's some other verses there you can read in your own time, but Proverbs 24, verse 30. I went to pass the field of a sluggard, past the vineyard of someone who has no sense. Thorns had come up everywhere. The ground was covered with weeds. It sounds like my backyard. And then the stone wall was in ruins. I applied my heart to what I observed, and I learned a lesson from what I saw. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. And it tells us that diligence is rewarded, but apathy results in destruction and ruin. Even the fence is broken down because no one had put time and attention into it. These things are not easy, to be diligent and disciplined. But in your notes, work faithfully in adversity and prepare for greatness. Work faithfully in adversity, prepare for greatness is the last point there. Prepare for greatness, because I believe that God does have great dreams for you. I believe the best is yet to come. We sing like that God has great things in store for us. We just can't always see it in the moment. I want to wrap it up with this story and one final verse. Now, Jennifer and I were on a walk a while back, and we were walking through a neighborhood, and it was like kind of dusk at night, and we're out and had the stroller and all that, and it was a relaxing night, and just having a good talk. And we're going past this one home, and they had this big picture window, all right? The big window was open. The time of night it was, their lights weren't inside, so you just glance at the house, and you can see the people inside the house. It's not like we were like trying to look in the house, but you could just walking past, you could see. Well, the man and woman were in their living room. They're standing in the living room, and they were, now I know what they were doing. I didn't know at the time, but in the moment, they're standing there in the middle of the living room, and both of them are facing the same wall, and they're doing this. They're doing this kind of thing. And we're like, this is so weird. Like, who does that in their living room? Like, they're in a boxing match. Well, after we kind of like just check this moment out for a second, like, they were playing Nintendo Wii, all right? So they had their controllers, and they're into this game. Well, we can't see the screen. All we can see is these two people like throwing their fists through the air, like just look like frantically, like, what? This is so weird. Like, people do that for fun. But like, it made a lot more sense when we got the whole picture, when we can see what was actually happening. They were, interacting with the screen. Some of us, we're working feverishly and diligently and whatever it is that you're doing, and you don't see the end outcome. You don't see the result. You're like frustrated by it. You're not sure if it's going anywhere. And these are matters that you should bring to the Lord in prayer. But let me just say this. It's possible that for some of us, it's like Joseph, that maybe you're stuck somewhere. Maybe you're in that dip. Maybe you're trying to figure out life. And God has something greater for you. He's unfolding a great plan for you and for those around you. He wants to do great things in your life. And if you would just be faithful to follow him and whatever that next step is. So what is that next step for you? What is it that you need to do? And how can you pour yourself more into what your current situation is before dreaming about what's next? How can you be faithful here and now and to honor God in this moment? If you will, I believe that God will set you up for greatness that is yet to come. Right on? Let's pray together. Father, thank you for this time that we've had together. I thank you for what you're doing in our lives. And God, when we think about this area of work, it's not an easy area of life because, God, it's a challenging area. And there's a lot of adversity from time to time. There's hardships, God. There's difficulties. There's a lack of. And I just pray for those today who are looking for work, that you would provide for them. I pray for promotions. I pray for people to get great jobs that they love. I pray for people to have raises and for great things to happen in their life. I pray all these things, but God, I pray most of all that in their work, whatever it is that they're doing, as they put their hands to it, that they would honor you. I pray that they would strive to do it with excellence, that they'd strive to please you in it. And as it says in Colossians 3:23, may they work at it with all their heart as working for you, Lord, and not for man, because they know that their inheritance is from you. And God, you reward and you bless the diligent. So God, thank you for the work you've given us to do. May we be diligent in it. May I bring you praise. In Jesus' name we pray. And everyone said, amen.
Thanks for watching Church Experience Online. Again, if you'd like to learn more, get connected, or help fuel the movement by giving, you can click on the appropriate links on the website. Thanks again for watching, and we hope to see you soon.